Hello, my name is Dr. Terry Daniels, and welcome to the Rhythm of Business interview series. We have with us this morning Chandler Lyles, who is the co-founder of High Beam Marketing, and I want to make sure that we have a chance to hear from him. So, Chandler, thank you so much for being with us this morning. And just getting us started, would you share with the audience, who you are, what you do a little bit, and we'll get going from there.
Dr. Daniels, man, I feel A, honored that you had me on the show, and B, I feel woefully inadequate. I need to go back to school. I think I need to pump it up. Brief background on me. I tried to do school. It did not work. I did it for 3 semesters, and so I dropped out and joined the Air Force, and I got to do that for 4 years, and it was a great time.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. It was a big honor for sure. So I did that for 4 years, and it was a lot of fun. It was a very challenging thing. And, you're a teenager into early 20s. It's a big learning curve. And I got very lucky. The job I got was basically like the business side of the military. It was in contracting. So we were doing a lot of negotiations between the government and different contractors that would come onto base and provide goods and services and whatnot. So that was kind of my introduction into the business world. And then from there, I randomly started barbecuing in my backyard one day, and just sort of that grew into a little side hustle for me and ended up being my first business, which I called Lyles Barbecue Company, which I started with my mom and dad, actually. So I ran a family business for 6 years with them. And that was a lot of fun, and I'm happy to dive into that world. So I did direct to consumer brick and mortar business for 6 years. And really, like, when you run a first business, you sort of get to wear every hat, as I'm sure you're aware. And so I got to taste every different area of the business. And the area that I ended up really falling in love with was marketing. And so after the restaurant closed due to some bad business decisions on my part, which I'm happy to talk about and give the lessons learned so people can avoid it too. I ended up getting a job down here in Nashville at a company called Ramsey Solutions, and ended up working on their marketing team, and met my 2 co-founders for High Beam Marketing while we were there. And so we left and started our own digital advertising agency. And we've been doing this for, oh my gosh, it's 2.5 years now, which is crazy. So that is as quick as I can make it, last 15 years of my career and how I ended up in entrepreneurship.
Excellent background. And again, I love the idea of your starting out in barbecue. Now you piqued my interest. And when you talk about barbecue, now you spoke to my heart right there. In your backyard. So that's pretty cool. So as you went into this entrepreneurial journey, really got a taste of it, maybe with the barbecue work there. Anything else as you think, looking forward, like, I love this entrepreneurial space. Why take this leap into furthering this entrepreneurial journey of yours?
That's a really good question. It reminds me of a conversation I had with my wife maybe 6 months into building High Beam Marketing, which is my second business I'm building from scratch with 2 partners. And, in the beginning of any entrepreneurial endeavor, especially if you're going to be the one bootstrapping it, things are very hard. You're working at night, you're working early in the morning, you're working all day. Other areas of your life may be put on the back burner because so much of your time has to be put into the thing to get it off the ground. Because if you're not really well funded, which I've never been well funded with any of the businesses I've done, you have to trade time for leverage. And so you're spending a lot of that time to create that leverage. And so that inevitably will create, friction with your family that you're spending time with or not spending time with because you're actually building the business, right? And so you have to have a lot of conversations with those people to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all in agreement that it's going on, yada, yada. But my wife and I were having one of those conversations about 6 months into this, and she goes like, why, you left a good job, you were making good money, you had a good solid career map. Like, why did you, like, you were working, 40, 45, maybe 50 hours on the worst weeks. Like, why are you doing this? Like, what is the problem? And I remember looking at her dead in the face, and I went, Julia, if I could choose not to do this, I would, because it is insane. I know it's insane. Like, to try to build something from scratch, to have no resources or to be underfunded and go actually compete with other people is an insane proposition. And so my thought on the whole thing now is basically, unless you feel this like just burning passion, calling, drive, whatever you want to define it as, to go do the thing you're dreaming about doing, don't do it.
Right.
Unless you can only focus on that and you feel less than at night when you go to sleep, like that's kind of the best description I can give you. It's like, you're not living up to the thing you're supposed to be doing. Don't do it. Like I met this guy one time when I was running the barbecue restaurant, and he goes, he was installing my cable at my house, and he comes in and he goes, "Oh man, I see your barbecue sweatshirt you're wearing. Like, I love that place. I eat there all the time." And I'm like, "Oh man, that's great. I'm super honored. I own it. Like, I'm one of the owners there." He's like, "Oh, that's so cool. I always dreamed of owning my own sandwich shop." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. Kind of like a local Jimmy John's, better quality, Potbelly, something like that." And he said, "Yeah, yeah, something like that. But I want to do these cool custom sandwiches." And he starts like explaining this dream to me. And you know me, and I'm sure you're like this, Dr. Terry. It's like you start getting excited for them and with them because you're a visionary and you want to help them build the thing. And you're like, "Yeah, you could do this and you could do this." And then, like, in the middle of that conversation, I just stopped myself and I said, "So, like, how many sandwiches have you sold?" And he goes, what do you think it is? You think he's going to say, like, a couple dozen, like I do it on the weekends? Like, you would think he would say that after he explains it with so much passion. Dude, he sold zero. He had never sold a sandwich. He had never put meat on bread with sauce and cheese and sold it to somebody for $1. Even if you
Wow.
lost money on the sandwich, like the difference in $0 in sales and $1 in sales is the difference in somebody being a entrepreneur or an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I look at that guy and I go, I think it's fun for him to dream. And it's like, it's fun for us all to dream to do stuff. Like I dream
Mm.
sometimes about being a bodybuilder on the Mr. Olympia stage. Like that looks cool. But then you start reading about the sacrifices and what it takes to actually get to that level of peak
Yeah.
physical performance and the things you got to give up. And I'm like, I have no calling to do that, no desire. So I
Wow.
just want to
Wow.
like be healthy enough to be around for my kids and my business for a long time.
Well, I tell you what, it sounds like that there's a passion there, and Chandler, you've tapped into it. And as you share the story about the individual with the sandwich, he had the passion, and he maybe not have tapped into it. What are some of the misconceptions that you think an entrepreneur might be missing as they consider this option? Thinking about the young man as well, and what are some of those misconceptions that the audience might miss as they think about leaping into an entrepreneurial journey?
Mm. I think it's a complicated question. And I think it's very nuanced depending on who exactly you're talking to. I can answer it for myself and basically tell you what the mistakes I made when I first
Mhm.
started. Um, the first one was that I worked in the beginning on the business like I thought that I was going to get to this magical promised land, and then all of a sudden everything was going to get easy, and all my dreams are going to be realized, and like the work was going to be done, and the problems were going to stop showing up, and like I was going to just, if I could just grind now, I'll get to this place and everything will be great. And that is a lie. That is a myth. It never exists. The problems just get bigger and more expensive.
Yeah.
And you, hopefully, if you've done your job right, have more money and more people and more resources to throw at the problems, but they never go away. And
Yeah.
so I had to sort of figure out, and I did a lot of this work personally in between the barbecue restaurant and starting High Beam Marketing to figure out, like, okay, do I enjoy the process of being an entrepreneur? Do I enjoy the freedom, the flexibility? Yeah, of course. But do I also enjoy that, like, there's nobody else other than my business partners to talk to when it comes up with a problem in the business?
Yeah.
And I do. And that's why I ultimately ended up launching this second thing. So that's lesson one that I learned that I would tell anybody not to do. It's you truly have to enjoy the day-to-day process. And if you don't, like, just don't do it.
Yeah.
I try to talk a lot of people out of being entrepreneurs. And if I can't, then I'm like, okay, you should go start your own
Yeah.
business because you're going to do it anyway. So it's probably
Yeah.
going to work. The second thing is that you'll never know enough to start. Like you'll never have a perfect plan. You'll never have enough information, anything. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't continue to learn while you're doing the thing. So
Wow.
when I was in the Air Force, I was constantly reading books and I had a day job technically, even though it was the military. And so I was dreaming, about this other world that I was trying to create, this barbecue restaurant, this entrepreneurship endeavor. And so I'd read books every day. I was studying, I was learning, I was like on the weekends selling barbecue, like I was in it doing the thing, but I was constantly learning and constantly putting stuff out in the world and getting that information back and then mixing those two things together to create a better, more clear picture. The mistake I made was that when I started the actual barbecue business itself, I stopped reading. I stopped listening to the podcast. I stopped listening to books on tape. I stopped reading books. I stopped talking to other entrepreneurs because all of a sudden I talked to other entrepreneurs and they would just say, everything's rosy, everything's great, never been better, yada, yada. And I'm like, this is crazy because 80% of businesses close in the first 5 years, but everybody I talk to is doing great. I don't understand. So everybody's lying. It's a crazy thing. So never stop learning, but never don't take action while you wait on more information. Like at some point, you got to be comfortable with the amount of information you have to be able to make a decision and go forward. So that would be number two. And then threes are great round numbers. So I'll do number three with you are underrating consistency. No matter how much you think you believe in consistency, you don't to the level you need to believe in it because it is showing up every single day, trying to make 5 new business connections, right? That's something we're doing at Hy-Vee. It's like, do you do that every single day, 5 days a week for months at a time? Then you'll get the result you're looking for. And it is boring, consistent, boring, unsexy, boring, consistent, not going to be cool on a stage talking about flash and dash and pills or anything like it's not fat loss drugs. Like it is boring. Consistency has to become your new personality. Like you literally have to become the type of person that is like, somebody sees you and they're like, that dude he just rolls on. He's just like, my favorite analogy was, who Jim Collins is? You ever read
Yeah.
any
Oh
of
yeah.
his
Oh yeah.
books?
Oh
The
yeah. Yeah.
author?
Yeah. Good to great.
Good to Great. Yeah, I think it was in Good to Great that he actually talks about the concept of the 20-mile march,
Yep.
which, if you remember that, I'm happy to let you explain it. If not, I'm happy
Yeah,
to do it.
go for it.
Well, the 20-mile march is basically like you are going to set out from one side of the country to the other, right? We're here in the US. And so, like, let's say you want to go from New York to LA. One guy sets out and he goes 50 miles on day one because he left in the middle of spring. The weather's good, not too hot, not too cold, no rain. He's feeling good. He's fresh, all the things. He goes 50 miles. The next day, he goes 40 miles. And then he goes like 10 miles because he's a little sore and he's done a little much. And then he does 1 mile. And then he takes 3 days off because he broke some stuff. He had to wait on new stuff to get there, yada, yada. And he just does this whole thing the whole way across the country. Some days are big days and some days are like he doesn't move for 4 months. And, eventually he just gives up halfway through the country. He gets to Kansas or something like that and he doesn't ever make it. And then the other guy, he leaves New York and he says, I got one plan. I'm going to not take myself out of the game and I'm going to go at least 20 miles a day. Good days, 20 miles. I'm going to cut it off. Bad days, I'm going to go 20 miles, even though I don't want to go 20 miles, but I'm just going to consistently produce the work every single day. And that guy inevitably will make it all the way across the country way faster than the other guy.
Yeah.
And that is a mental model that I apply all the time. And I'm not perfect at it, to be honest with you. There's some days where I still get ego driven and immature and all the things where I go, we got to get to $1 million in the next 6 months. And it's and like, we're going to do all this crazy stuff. And like, I'm the big vision guy on the team. And like, I want to have this big future and all the things, And that's when I'm being my worst and not being disciplined when it comes to entrepreneurship. So adopting the 20-mile march mantra is the third point I would take.
That is a great model. And I think that consistency, as you said, it pays off in the long run. And those five contacts in some interval, those things pay off. It's just a consistent model. And I'm sure the audience is like, wow, can I hear this guy again? You're really top notch.
Thank you.
Now, so with all this that you're doing, and you said this, and I really appreciate you sharing about you and your conversation with your wife, Julie, earlier. How do you manage your balance with this growth in business? Because I'm sure the audience is wondering, I've got to put all this time in. I've got to do this 20 mile. I've got to stay consistent. I've got to do all these things. 5 years is that magic marker where do they really last 5 years? How do you maintain this balance? And I don't want to even call it work-life balance, I just call it
Mm,
life balance, right?
mhm.
How do you manage balance and grow your business? How do you do that?
Yeah, well, I've done it the wrong way, and I've done it this time around a better way. So I can start with the wrong way. The barbecue restaurant. Here's what happened: a young 24-year-old Chandler got really excited about this dream and got his parents on board and said, "All right, we're all gonna start this business
Yeah,
together." And my contract with the Air Force ran out um, on time, honorable discharge, all the things. And then my parents retired from the Air Force at the same time, and we all moved back to Lexington together, and we started. And I didn't have a plan. I didn't really have a plan for money. I just had like this blind belief that like me and my we'd been married 2, 3 years at that point. I was like, we'll just figure it out. Like we had like 10 grand in the bank, and she had just graduated college, and she was going to be a teacher of third graders. So she's going to be making big money,
yeah,
and I was going
yeah,
to be an
absolutely.
entrepreneur selling barbecue on the side of the road out of a tent. So I was going to be making big money,
Yeah,
and we just launched. And to her credit, we've had a lot of conversations over the years. Like that was 12 something years ago. We've had a lot of conversations over the years now where she goes, yeah, I should have been more self-aware to push back on you. And like, I just sort of went where you were going and like just went along and da da da. And so we both had to mature in our relationship, but I definitely was the one that made the mistake because I didn't make a better plan to go, hey, here's how we're going to buy groceries and gas.
mm,
Because you can't do that with big vision, right? You can have all the big dreams you want, but you can't buy groceries and gas. And something we learned in the military is supply chains win and lose wars.
yeah,
And if you don't build up your own supply chain, you're going to war with the market in a way, not as black and white, but you are going to do a really hard thing. And if you don't set up this supply chain the right way, i.e., have enough money in the bank, don't be over leveraged, have your spouse on board for emotional support, then you're going to end up in a really bad place. And so I basically, for 6 straight years, with such a big vision and such a like, I'll just outwork everybody, and my parents are the same cloth, or like, we'll just all outwork everybody. We just, through stupidity, made it to, we got like $1 million in revenue, and that's great. But what happened was we ended up making too big of a business bet down the road, and we crashed the whole thing. And the whole while, my wife was just dragged along. And I never really consulted her on any of the stuff we were doing. I was the smartest guy in the room. I had had all these wins. I was young and dumb. Like I was going to make it work. Boom, 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 boom. All the things. You're a business coach. I'm sure you've seen this story play out a million
yeah,
times, and I'm
yeah, yeah.
definitely no exception. And that, I mean, frankly, that stupidity cost me a company. And what it cost me was a lot of things. It cost me 6 years of momentum, which you'll tell people all the time, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Like building momentum in a business is a key indicator if you can make it or not, because
Absolutely.
although time you're spending early on eventually turns easier because other people get to help you. Well, I went from a staff of 25 to a staff of me and two partners. And so that's not great for momentum, right? And I just told you I'm 2.5 years in, and we're still only like half the way to the previous revenue of the previous business. So momentum is something you really got to respect and cherish. And furthermore, my wife and I, like, you get to the end of that thing and you have this very dramatic like business closing, and like in Lexington, it's a smaller town, so like when restaurants close, they want to talk about it because Food Network's popular and all the things. And so basically, we were on the front page of the paper, and like people at her school would ask her about it. And so she was getting a lot of social pressure she didn't ask for, that I basically forced on her. And our marriage struggled, and it was a very touch and go thing where it was like she's trying to decide if she's going to stay with me, and I'm trying to figure out if she should, because I'm like, man, I am a doofus. Like, why would you stay with me?
Well,
Um,
I think to that point, Chandler, family is part of all of this, right? And I think you've been blessed with the parents and the support there. So all you've known is families involved, right?
mhm.
How do we have that up front? And that's very admirable that you all have talked it through. And I think
Yeah.
businesses out there and owners out there and entrepreneurs are out there may not even see this reality that you just shared. Families involved, whether they want to be in it or not. And so
That's
how do
right.
I make sure that it doesn't adversely affect them?
Yeah.
But that's the
Yeah.
word of
And
entrepreneur.
it is. But the key is that you can do both, I think, well. And what we did the second time around was I promised her with this new venture that we'd talk about it the whole time.
Mhm.
I'd never take too many risks. Like I ended up getting a job and I worked on a full-time job. Both my partners had full-time jobs for like a year plus while we like figured out this new business model, built money in the bank, built up a book of business, like did a lot of things to mitigate the risk associated with starting a business. And it's been a much smoother ride this time around just because we did a lot better job about mitigating risk and being like things can go like we don't have to be in a hurry in business. Like we have this weird narrative inside of our heads that we have to be in a hurry and go win
Yeah,
today,
yeah,
and you don't. The
yeah,
business world, people still eat barbecue in Lexington, even though I'm not there. The
yeah,
game is
yeah.
going to go on forever, whether you play or not. So like, you might as well enjoy the ride.
Are you all more strategic going forward? How would you say with where you are? Say you're halfway there, right? And so we've got future plans. We want to grow our business, obviously. Are you thinking more strategically? How are you all planning for your future? How do you lead your team and be part of the team leading this forward?
Sure. Yeah. So annual planning is a big thing for us. We were fortunate enough to be able to afford a trip to Miami, so we did an offsite for a couple of days in Miami. We're just outside of Nashville, so that
Yeah,
was pretty cool for us to be able to do a couple months ago. Then we have quarterly planning meetings where we come in and check in to see like, hey, we set these year goals. Like, are we on pace, off pace? What do we need to change?
yeah,
And then we break it down further. We have a weekly meeting with the whole leadership team where we're going, hey, these are the weekly measurables you got to knock out. Are we on track or off track with these quarterly goals? Where are we at with the budget? Do we have big emergency things that came up? Um, and then honestly, for me, so like I said, I'm a visionary type entrepreneur. I see the big picture. I see things before other people do. Where I suck is the how to get there.
mhm,
And, I'm such a visionary type guy and I messed it up so bad with the barbecue restaurant that I feel like I wanted to be extra safe this time around. So I have two guys that are both visionaries in their own right, but they're really good at integrating.
yeah,
And those are my business partners. They're very good at like coming in and making sure the ops of the business are running smoothly on a day-to-day basis. And they're very good about reeling me back in with like, hey, like let's just go halfway to the thing you're talking about, and we'll probably end up actually getting there. And so I think it's some lattice work of all of that is what's helped us get to this level of success. I will say, like, this business has gone much faster than the barbecue business just because you have lessons learned and just
yeah.
don't make the same mistakes twice. You'll probably end up in a better place.
Well, I think to that point, those mile markers are critical, and I think what you all have, and as you said, you're a visionary, and you've had your hands in so many pieces of the puzzle with the business. How do I leverage all of the pieces, right, at the same time? And whether
Mm-hmm.
it's you doing them or partners doing it, you've got to have those mile markers. You've got to step back. Either you work in the business or you work on the business. Working in the business, you can get lost in the weeds pretty quickly, but stepping back, I mean, and you all
Mm-hmm.
seem like you've done that very well. As we come to a close and you think about that entrepreneur that's out there, what do you tell them if they're sitting on the couch and saying, I wish I could take this business, or the individual that wish he could make sandwiches? What do you tell that person out there that's contemplating entrepreneurship? What would you tell them if you're Chandler 5 years ago?
Mm. So, like, just so I can have correct framing here, they are somebody that already wants to be an entrepreneur and they're looking
Yes.
for like, what I'm in, I want to do it. Like, what do I do next?
Yes,
Like
yes,
that person.
yes, yes, yes.
Got it. Um, there's like this framework I use for getting into new things in life, and it's served me pretty well. And so that would be the thing I probably run them through. And I'm a big Jim Collins guy, and so
Yeah,
I love a flywheel. We have a
yeah.
marketing
I
flywheel
love
here at High Beam. Like I have a leadership flywheel. I flywheel everything now. Build the
it.
momentum,
Yeah,
don't kill the momentum.
yeah, yeah,
So doing anything new, I break it down like this. At the very top of the flywheel, I would put input. And what that means is that you have to be every single day reading a book, listening to a podcast, watching a YouTube video. There's so much great free information out there.
yeah.
Free information is the key word there. I would stay away from paid courses and things like that in the beginning because you don't even know what you don't know. So what you're paying for is you don't even know if you need it yet. And there's so much good free stuff that you don't have to. But every day, again, 20-mile march, a little bit at a time, I would learn something new. You have to force yourself into the community of people you want to be like, right? And this is about everything in life. This would work for anything, whether you want to be a
Mhm.
bodybuilder or an entrepreneur. So like get into consuming content that entrepreneurs make and teach and whatnot. Meet people like yourself, like take you out to coffee, like, hey, what do I need to know about being an entrepreneur? Da da da. Like, I know you'll say yes to that kind of thing. People like you just do that.
Mhm.
So that's the top of the flywheel. The next thing is output. Taking in information and being well prepared and smart is only so good. It's all theoretical. You have to get out of the classroom and actually go put things into practice.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you're just never going to get off the couch, right? You're
Absolutely.
never going to leave that entrepreneur stage.
Yeah.
So in that sandwich guy's example, he should make his first 10 sandwiches and go door to door and sell them, or he should go to a food farmer's market and sell them. He should do something to start selling sandwiches, whether not
Absolutely.
quit his job, not take out a HELOC on his house, not go raise a bunch of money. I mean, for the most part, for 98% of us in the business world, that's not the world we're going to be in. We're not building the next Facebook, and that's okay. But like, if you're going to go start being a dry cleaner, for instance, just like go door to door and be like, I will dry clean your clothes for you. I'm starting a new service, whatever. And like, try your theories out and see what works and see what doesn't. And
Yeah.
that's where the next piece comes in, which is on the bottom of the flywheel, which is data. Like, what is the information you're getting back?
Mhm.
Okay. I found out that if I do 10 sales calls, I get 0 new clients. But if I do 100, I get 1. Well, now I've got data and I can figure out, okay, I can work backwards and figure out if I got 1,000 sales calls, I have 10 new clients and
Mhm.
so on and so forth. If I make sandwiches on the barbecue pit like this, they cost me this. And then I make this much profit. And then you can slowly start to like improve your system.
Absolutely.
And then the final piece of the flywheel is community. Like, who do you know that's on
Love it.
this? There's a few people I like to have. There's generally, it's harder in the beginning to get this person, but like somebody that's below you that you can mentor, because that's going to make you think differently and make you
Yeah.
be a different sort of way. You want somebody that's in the same level as you, so that's like you two can grow together and push each other and sort of compete and have like
Mhm.
a worthy competitor, that kind of thing. You're not enemies, but you're just like friendly
Mhm.
competition. And then you need somebody that's like 1 to 2 steps above you, not Nike, not way above.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar company, but like, who's the guy that has like 4 restaurants? Go talk to him, become his friend, like pay him $100 for coffee, like do whatever you got to do to get in that community of people. Because then when you go back to the top of the flywheel, which is input, and you read the next book on entrepreneurship, all of a sudden you're going, this dude just wrote this book to sell books. Like, this is a terrible book.
Yeah.
But you only know that because you went through all the other pieces and you got real world experience. And
Yeah.
then maybe 90% of that book is garbage, but 10% gives you one extra thing that you can go
Yes.
test in the market with output. And then it works and you see it in the data. And then you share that with your community of people. And then you go back to the input. And then I would just spin that flywheel until you're tired of being an entrepreneur.
I'm tell you what, I think you nailed it with the flywheel model and using that. I think I mean, the way you explained it, Chandler, it just lays it out very well. And I think the audience of entrepreneur desires people will say, wow, I can do that. And you make it so simple. So thank you so much for that. Again, to the audience, thank you for being part of our uh, Rhythm of Business podcast series. We have Chandler Lyles, who is the co-founder of High Beam Marketing. He has shared his wisdom. Thank you so much for participating and listening. And we look forward to you listening to us again later on. So Chandler, thank you so much for sharing with us today.